Why isn't this mic working? Why does this happen every time I try to start one of these streams? It's just the mic, it never works. Let me just take a drink. So everyone, I thought that I would come on here and enlighten you all because I've been thinking. I have a theory that I've been wanting to talk to you guys about. Something I've been thinking about for quite a while. But before we talk about it, I wanted to tell you about something. And this is something I saw on a website the other week. It was about learning styles. You see, you have three types of learning styles. You have the auditory learner, the visual learner, and the kinesthetic learner. And the kinesthetic learner is like the man who fishes, asks to get a fish, and then he learns to beg because somebody gives him a fish. The visual learner watches the man fish, but he doesn't understand that the the fish is used to nourishment. But the auditory learner can do both. He can hear a description of how to fish, and he can also be told about how I'm sorry. How he the nutrients within the fish. So I realize that it summarizes so many things in our postmodern society, because you have the average person, the normie, the average degenerate, and he is a visual learner, and he sees all the sex on TV because men are visual creatures, and that coupled with a visual learning style means that they're highly susceptible to the kind of stuff that comes out of the sewer pipe of Hollywood. And that is how our overlords are able to control us, because of the predominance of visual learners. And the kinesthetic learner they're not intellectuals. They aren't the kind of person who could run society. They're like your average guy who goes to work at a box factory and just makes boxes all day. That's all they do. And I guess that's important, but they aren't writing blogs or doing other things. But then you have the audio learner who learns through reason and discussion. Because if he's on a date with a beautiful woman, he doesn't look at her beauty. He appreciates her mind. He appreciates her her as a woman in a way that the auditory and the let me just share this on Beckloff's server. The auditory and the other type of learner could just never truly understand. So I took the test, and it turned out that I was an auditory learner. And it made me start to think that if I was an auditory learner, and auditory learners are the only ones, it made who could both see through the fog of postmodernity and sorry, I just have to share this. Oops. Oh, that was the wrong. If I was the only one who could, if they were the only ones who could see through this, and they're the only ones who are fit to lead society, and I got a 90% for auditory learner. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that my learning style means that I should be one of the people running society. So that's just something, my friends. I'm here. I have a cup of chamomile tea. I'm sitting here in the dark. It's this kind of avant-garde, some avant-garde comedy tonight. So, what I wanted to talk about, and I've been reading a lot of books recently. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and when I'm doing all of these things, a thought occurred to me, and this is about the errors of Protestantism and how it brought us to postmodernity. And it's about that. It's also about the Aztecs and democracy and diabetes. So, so you have the Filioque, and this was something that the Eastern Orthodox Church added on to the Nicene Creed. And it said the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, the Son, and everyone else. So the Holy Spirit proceeds from all the members of the church. And this is something that the Eastern Church added, but the Catholic Church didn't add. Because the Catholic Church has always valued the sense of monarchy. The Catholic Church was the first institution to ever truly value monarchy. So yes, and what happened when we were doing when the Reformation came about was the Protestants re-put the Filioque into the Nicene Creed. And the issue with that was if the Holy Spirit proceeds from everyone, then that means that everyone is equal and everyone needs to have a vote in our society. So this kind of reminds me of an experience that the Chinese had when they first contacted the Aztecs. So, as you all know, Aztec culture developed as a result of their meeting with the Chinese, and that's why when Europeans first encounter the Aztecs, they are worshiping Shiva, the Chinese god of war. So the Aztecs are worshiping Shiva, the Chinese god of war. So what happened is the Aztecs were kind of like this noble savage. They had this conception that the Holy Spirit proceeded from the Son. And the Son is kind of like the Father. And the Holy Spirit proceeded from Shiva. So the Holy Spirit proceeded from Shiva, but then when they were contacted by the Chinese, Buddhism came over, and Buddhism taught them that the Holy Spirit proceeds from everybody, and but only by embracing the Holy Spirit could you achieve nirvana and go to the 7 heavens. So what I'm saying is once we get to the Spanish, when we get to the Milanese discovering the New World, they find that the Aztecs are involved in human sacrifice. And this is because the Chinese, when they brought over not just Shiva, but Buddhism imparted this understanding that the Holy Spirit was proceeding from all peoples. And so they felt that they had to cut people open and let the Holy Spirit out as a way of preventing the long night from happening, as a way of preventing winter from coming, because the Aztecs lived in constant fear of winter, because they lived up on like the margins of society. They lived up in the margins of society on the northwestern coast of Canada, and to them they had to sacrifice to prevent winter from coming, because whenever it came they would have to perform a dance and eat their young. So what I'm trying to say here is Protestantism was actually a form of Buddhism that originated in China. And it infected the Eastern Church, which is why the Eastern Church added the Filioque. And Eastern Europe was kind of the foundation of democracy, as it were. So, and then that came to the Catholic Church, and the Protestants inserted the Filioque into the Nicene Creed. And because of that, you had democracy come about. So, let's see if we have anything in chat. Oh, I have a whole 3 people watching. That's not bad for this time of night. Let's see if what my people are saying. Argent, you're way smarter than the average historian. Thank you. Argent, you are auditory learner master race. You totally deserve to run society. Thank you. I wasn't going to run society unless you asked me to. But since you asked me to so nicely, I will embrace the noblesse oblige. Now, on that subject, there's something you all might not have heard about, which is the... Let me think of something I can talk about. Okay, so diet. I'm trying to think. What's something else I could come up with? Reproductive methodology. Okay, so there's a number of different forms of reproductive methodologies that the different species have. And you have the species that births animals inside of their body from eggs. And then you have the species that lays eggs and they're born, and those are called mammals. And then you have birds, which give birth to live young. So you see the different types of reproductive strategies here. And what I've been trying to cultivate is I've been trying to genetically engineer people to be able to lay eggs. And once they're able to do that, we'll be able to shift humanity in a more K-type direction. So somebody's pointing out something that I forgot to mention, that the Aztecs were actually a lost Indo-European tribe. And that Quetzalcoatl probably lived in the year 1870. So Quetzalcoatl, the hummingbird god of the Aztecs, probably actually existed in the year 1900 AD. Now then, let me just. I have some turkey soup that I need to go and stir. But first I just like to say, there's three main types of poultry that's eaten in the Western world. There's the chicken, the turkey, and the duck. And you can tell a lot about the kind of person by the kind of meat that he prefers to eat. Now, the chicken eater is the kind of man who has no standards. He has no sense of quality. He'll just buy the cheapest thing. He's like the kind of degenerate that buys cherry brandy. He's like a gin addict back in the day. And he was willing to accept low quality, mass produced stuff. So, what happened is society became run by chicken eaters who only valued mass produced material goods. And that is why we have the refugee crisis today. Because the chicken eaters became the rulers of our society and they wanted to import chicken nuggets from the third world. Then you have the duck eater. And the duck eater is eating the fattiest type of meat because he is like an endomorph and not like an ectomorph. And because of that, because of the eating the fatty duck meat, he's incapable of um, of properly having impulse control. But the turkey eater realizes the good things in life. He's willing to wait a little longer to have something that's of superior quality. He's willing to wait for the turkey to grow up. He is the ideal father, both of the nation and of the individual. Also, turkey is a leaner meat and is healthier than duck. So he by eating turkey as your primary form of meat, you're able to show great leadership. And the kind of people who eat turkey are the kind of people who should be running society. Now, if you excuse me, on that note about the supremacy of the turkey eaters, I'm going to go stir my turkey soup. So, what were we talking about again? The Reformation. The Reformation and how Protestantism was the cause of all degeneracy. You see, what had happened was Protestantism took a foothold in Greece. Greece became a Protestant country very early on. I think it was around 1100 AD or so. So Greece became a Protestant country, and there was a Protestant sect called the Spartans, and they used to practice an institutionalized form of degeneracy in which the young boys would have senile old men and they would relieve their lust on the senile old men. And So the Spartans were kind of like a Puritan group. They were like a past puritanical group that emerged. And prior to that, Greece had been a Catholic country that had rejected the Filioque. So Greece rejected the Filioque. And because of that, they were free from degeneracy. But when the Reformation happened, they adopted it. You see, today we are trying to. The mainstream historian has tried to make it so that homosexuality was something that happened in ancient times in Greece. But it didn't happen in ancient times. It only happened after. It only happened after the Reformation took place in approximately the 1800s or so. So then, what was I talking about? It's just, guys, I'm designing a product for industry. It's going to be a life coaching app. So, what I have is there is a base app that gives you one motivational message every day. But if you want to pay for the DLC, there are little quotes of mine that pertain to every aspect of life. And I bill based on the length of the quote. It's approximately $20 a minute or so. So for every $20 you give into the app, you get an additional 20 minutes of life coaching. So this is the product that I'm designing for industry. So, hopefully you guys will be able to purchase this real soon. I think I have some good advice about that. So, I've been receiving some bad comments lately on my channel. There's been some people, some members of the Fail Brigade who have been insulting me and saying my content's bad and that I get things wrong and that I've made like some errors in the past. Things like that. I actually forgot where I was going with this. Let me just try to see if it's going with this train of thought. Oh, right, yes. So there've been these people who there's some guy named Fritz Imperial who's saying Carthage did nothing wrong. Praise Baal. Well, Baal was the historic god of the Jains. The Carthaginians did not worship Baal. The Carthaginians were actually a Nordic tribe that had settled in North Africa, and they worshipped the Allfather Wotan. Now, what was I saying again? Right. So there are these people who have been posting on my channel, and they've been insulting me, and they've been saying I don't know what I'm talking about. And the truth of the matter is these people are just they've just the truth of the matter is these people are angry because they're virgins who don't watch porn. You see, if they just watched porn and they got out their lust on a daily basis, they wouldn't have this anger towards me. And they're too pathetic to go out to bars and get women drunk. What they need to do is they need to read Rush's books. They need to get women really drunk, fat women really drunk, and then have sex with them. And once they do that, they won't be virgins or incels anymore. and they will understand my content. Because that's really what this all comes down to. People might say, well, Argent, the Aztecs didn't actually worship Vishnu. They never had contact with the Chinese, and and Vishnu was actually an Indian god and not a Chinese god. But they're just saying this because they're fucking intels. And that's just that's just the issue that that's just the issue that they have. And I want to reaffirm once again that there's no one who's more of a traditional Catholic than me. And no one has been a more consistent opponent of degeneracy for this whole time. Because, like I said, you have the visual learner who is taken in by all these things. He sees men like me and all the women that I'm getting, and he's just jealous of it. And that is what the incel is, because he cannot hear how to go and get the sex that he craves. And, I think part of the reason for this is these men have an ectomorphic body type, whereas I have an endomorphic body type. And women like an endomorphic body type because in ancient times it would help them to keep warm during the winters. So yes. So I guess what I'm saying is this is yet another reason why auditory learners need to run society. Not that I'm saying I'm the one who should run society. I want to tell you a joke. It's a really funny joke. So these two men go hunting in the woods, and one of them accidentally shoots the other one with a gun. And the man is bleeding to death on the ground, and he calls an ambulance, and the ambulance the operator asks him and says, the operator says, before we continue, could you make sure he's dead? And then the man shoots the guy on the ground again, and he says, okay, what now? And isn't that where we are as a society? Western civilization is dying, and Islam is the other hunter who's standing over us, and he's going to make sure that we're dead. But subconsciously, he realizes that he actually needs us. And so he's attempting to call in the African ambulance to go and save Europe. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go check my chicken stew. I mean turkey stew. So, I don't know if someone wants to suggest something that I could add into this travesty. Sorry, I know I'm breaking character. Okay. Um. Hmm. So, something I've noticed lately is a lot of people are just have this jealousy within them. And it's because they invest all their time and energy on making content for the internet. And they define themselves entirely on the basis. They describe themselves entirely on the basis of the content that they make for the internet. And it's because they have so little going on in their lives outside of the internet that they have to define themselves that way. Instead of making a product for industry, instead of talking to drunk fat girls at bars and taking them back to your mother's basement, they focus all their attention on the internet, and they don't make connections with people in real life. They only know people online. And there's a sense of jealousy towards me that I can have this and that I have so much success in real life as well. So, there's this video game that I used to play a lot back in the day, and it's I think one that just didn't get the sort of attention it deserved. It was called Second Sight, and it was this really interesting third person kind of shooter action game in which you had psychic powers and you had to solve a lot of problems using the psychic powers. And there's kind of this interesting flashback, flash forward, and you were never really sure what was in the past and what was in the present. And it had like a really cool ending. And yeah, I'm just gonna go off topic for a minute. Yeah, Second Sight was fucking awesome. If you haven't played Second Sight, you gotta play Second Sight. Unironically, I just was trying to come up with some like old obscure game that I could bring up. And I think this is a metaphor for what we're going to do as the West. See, we don't know right now if we're seeing the future or we're seeing the past. That is, if we are going to live in the future or we're going to live in the past. And I think what's going to happen is when the West collapses, you're going to have these small groups of people who are the endomorphs, who are auditory learners, and they're going to emerge from this stronger than ever. They're going to have these powers, and they're going to become the overlords of our society. Now, you could say I'm technically I'm by definition a libertarian fascist, but in truth, I've only ever supported absolute monarchy. It's the only type of governmental system that I think is correct. Now then, That's a good point. Somebody here is asking me about the Manchu people who live in the Middle East. So the Manchu people who live in the Middle East are Hindu. And Hinduism is one of those religions that embrace the Filioque. If you read the Bhagavad Gita, in it, Krishna lays out that the Holy Spirit, of which he is the Son of God, proceeds from everybody. And in accepting that, they have become equally degenerate. Because the Hindus have stopped eating bread and only consume meat. And because they only consume meat, they have grown weak. Because does not the Bible say in the Lord's Prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread"? And while the people of the Middle East have never been grain eaters, they used to have some rice in their diet prior to the adoption of Hinduism by the Manchukuo peoples that live in the Middle East. So that is an issue. Now, a question I was asked the other day is, are potatoes a grain or are they a meat product? And they have the starches and the sugars of the grain, but they're of the more complex variety. And because they were historically so heavily eaten by the Sami people in Portugal, and they were known for being the strongest and tallest people in Europe, I think we can classify them as a grain. I think we can classify them in that fashion. So then, let's look at the chat. We have Hitler did nothing wrong, saying that if only Hitler had declared himself to be the new Kaiser, the Third Reich would have succeeded. Because at the end of the day, Hitler was a democratic Republican, much like Thomas Jefferson, who accepted monarchy. Let's see whatever statements do I have in the chat. Potatoes are chicken eaters. And you know what I like to say? That McDonald's is the synagogue of Satan. Because at McDonald's, you can eat both French fries and the McChicken. And the combination of the French fry and the McChicken combines the worst aspects of the herbivore and the... I don't even know what it would be for someone who only eats birds. And the guy who only eats birds. The Aviator. Which sounds like a villain from one of Retzloff's Pokemon comics. McDonald's is Babylon. Because, as you know, the originators of the hamburger were the Babylonians. Burger is the Sanskrit translation of hamburger, which is the Indo-European word for sodomy. Then let's see here. Boogie makes a very good point in the in the chat. Um, the golden calf. Now it's a mistranslation from the original Scythian dialect. It's supposed to be calf, as in a woman's calf, and in the most prominent feature of the ectomorph, the ectomorph woman is known for her big calves. And the Jews worshipped them because they believed in fertility. And there's been this misunderstanding that the golden calf was actually an actual cow. But we know that the bull god was worshipped in Babylon by the Eastern Indo-Europeans as opposed to the Western Indo-Europeans that were the Jews. So everybody, there's a joke I'd like to tell you all. You probably haven't heard it before. But it's a really good joke. Just wait for the punchline. A couple of New Jersey hunters are out in the woods when one of them falls on the ground. He doesn't seem to be breathing and his eyes have rolled back at his head. The other guy whips out his mobile phone and calls the emergency services. He gasps to the operator, "My friend is dead. What can I do?" The operator, in a soothing tone, says, "Just take it easy. I can help. First, make sure he's dead." There is a silence, then a shot is heard. The guy's voice comes back on the line. He says, "Okay, now what?" Oh, that's a good one. One of many jokes, I know. One of many jokes that I am fully aware of. I'm just gonna break character briefly for a second. So the dissident rights survey is done. I have it set up. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'm going to be doing a live stream where we're going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to give all the results. I have everything broken down by religion and political ideology. I think you guys are going to find the findings really interesting. And I'm going to be putting up the tables and the actual PowerPoint on Google Drive. So if anyone wants to download it, and let me just put the link to the presentation and to the stream in the chat. So if anybody wants, they can go and sign up for the what is it again? They can turn on notifications because it should be a lot of fun. So that's just a side note, something just a little bit serious. Yes, I'm back. The duck soup is going very nicely. You know, the duck eater is the most like our Indo-European ancestors. He has the sense of adventure. he says, I'm willing to take the most risky but most delicious of poultries and to consume it knowing what it might do to your body. And that sense of adventure is something that we've lost as a Western civilization. People want to take either the chicken or the turkey. But the true patrician only eats duck. By the way, sorry, just a side note here. A side note. If you ever make like a Thanksgiving turkey or whatever, definitely make turkey stew out of or the turkey soup out of the leftovers. Make sure to put it in with I don't know, peas and carrots are good, but also put in a lot of noodles with it and like big chunks of meat, particularly dark meat, and that shit tastes amazing with a bit of Frank's Red Hot. How do fish eaters fit into nature's caste system? That's a very good question. The Catholic Church identified this, and it instituted a system for selecting society's leaders. Now, every Thursday, the church had it so that people could only eat fish. And those who ate the fish were judged worthy of entering into Valhalla and being ordained. And those inferior men who could not go without eating fish on Thursdays were cast out. And that was some of the bitterness that led to Protestantism, was these degenerates who went against natural law. The Logos dictates that the fish eater must rule over the carnivore, that the pescatarian is pescatarian. The flesh of Christ. The fish is the flesh of Christ. Some people think the bread is the flesh of Christ, but if you look at the story of the loaves and apples, Jesus passed around the loaves and apples until there were bushels of apples and dozens of fish. And the people made sushi, apple sushi out of the fish and consumed it. And that was the first communion. And they took some of those apples afterwards and they mashed them up and they made apple juice. And then they drank the apple juice, which is what I'm drinking right now. Now then. Oh, teach a man to fish and he'll have all the sushi. Indeed. Indeed. Now then. I must admit I'm getting very tired. I have a busy day of developing my product for industry tomorrow, and I'm going to need all of my sleep in order to do this. I need to sleep off the apple juice. So I'd like to just thank everybody who watched this stream. You are the high IQ people. You are the R-types, the endomorph, the auditory fish eater. And I just like to say thank you all. May Wotan shine upon you.